I'm Naomi, and I grew up in a small house with my parents and older sister, Emma. Dad worked at the local factory, and Mom sold groceries at the supermarket down the street. We weren't rich, but we got by. That all changed when my grandparents on Dad's side passed away and left us some money and their house. The new house was bigger, in a nicer part of town. Mom quit her job to focus on the family, as she put it. But really, she focused on Emma. From the start, Emma was the star. She learned to read before kindergarten and zoomed through schoolwork like it was nothing. Teachers praised her smarts, but always had something to say about her restlessness and short temper. At home, it was all about Emma. Mom and Dad bent over backwards to make her comfortable, signing her up for every class and activity they could afford. "Emma's our ticket out of here," Mom would say, stars in her eyes. "She'll be the first in the family to go to college. She'll take care of us when we're old." And me? I was just there. "Naomi, you'll have to work hard to get by," Dad told me once, patting my head. "You're not special like your sister." Those words stung, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I threw myself into helping around the house. By 12, I could cook simple meals and do laundry better than Mom. As we got older, the divide between Emma and me grew. She blazed through high school, collecting awards and accolades. I did okay, mostly B's with a few A's, but it was never enough to turn their heads. The day Emma got her college acceptance letter, you'd think she'd won the lottery. Mom cried, Dad popped open a bottle of champagne, and Emma preened like a peacock. "Full ride to prestigious university," she bragged, waving the letter in my face. "Bet you can't top that, little sis." I forced a smile. "Congrats, Emma. You earned it." Later that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Emma's words echoed in my head, "Bet you can't top that." And she was right. I couldn't. But maybe, just maybe, I could forge my own path. The day Emma left, I watched from my bedroom window as they loaded up the car. There were tears, hugs, and endless photos. Not once did anyone call for me to join them. The first few months after Emma left for college were strange. Mom and Dad orbited around her absence like lost satellites, constantly calling and messaging her. They'd gather around the phone, hanging on her every word about classes, new friends, and college life. "Our little genius," Mom would coo after each call. "She's going to change the world." I'd roll my eyes and retreat to my room or lose myself in housework. It was easier than listening to them gush about Emma's latest achievements. But then, something changed. The calls became less frequent. Emma's responses to texts grew shorter, sometimes just a terse "busy" or "later." I could see the worry lines deepening on Mom's face. About 6 months into Emma's freshman year, the bomb dropped. Mom was in the kitchen when her phone rang. Her face lit up when she saw it was Emma, but as she listened, her expression crumpled. "Emma, honey, what do you mean you're tired of us?" Mom's voice quavered. "We're your family." I don't understand. I pretended to be engrossed in my homework, but my ears were straining to catch every word. When Mom hung up, she looked shell-shocked. The next few months were tense. Emma's calls became rare, and when they did happen, they were short and cold. Then, one day, another bombshell hit. "She's lost her scholarship," Dad announced at dinner, his face ashen. "Emma's failed most of her classes. She says we need to pay for her tuition now." I nearly choked on my peas. "How much?" I asked, dreading the answer. When Dad named the figure, I thought he was joking. But the grim look on his face told me otherwise. "We'll have to take out a loan," Mom said, her voice trembling. "We can't let her drop out. She's so close to her dream." I wanted to scream. Their dream, not Emma's. But I kept my mouth shut and excused myself from the table. Over the next few months, I watched as my parents stretched themselves thin trying to keep Emma in college. They took out loans, cut back on expenses, and even dipped into their retirement savings. All for Emma, who seemed to grow more demanding with each passing day. It was during this time that they suddenly seemed to remember my existence. Mom started asking about my day, and Dad would inquire about my plans for the future. One evening, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. "Naomi, honey, have you thought about college? There are some good state schools nearby." I raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly would we pay for that?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, we'd find a way. You're our only hope now." I nearly laughed at the irony. After years of being the afterthought, I was suddenly their only hope. But I wasn't about to jump through hoops for their approval now. "I'm planning to work after graduation," I said flatly. "College isn't for everyone." As my high school graduation approached, the pressure intensified. My parents, drowning in debt from Emma's failed college attempt, suddenly became obsessed with my future. "You could get scholarships," Dad insisted one night. "Your grades aren't bad." I sighed. "Dad, my grades are average at best. I'm not getting a free ride anywhere." "But you have to try," Mom chimed in. "We're counting on you, Naomi." Those words hit me like a slap. After years of neglect, they were counting on me? The audacity was breathtaking. So, I made a decision. The day after graduation, I started job hunting. I wasn't going to college, at least not yet. I needed to stand on my own 2 feet, away from the shadow of Emma's failures and my parents' misplaced expectations. My first job wasn't glamorous. I landed a position at a small advertising agency, mostly doing grunt work, filing papers, getting coffee, and occasionally sitting in on meetings. Every paycheck felt like a step towards independence. Meanwhile, the situation at home was growing more tense by the day. Emma had dropped out of college, leaving our parents with a mountain of debt and shattered dreams. And then came the next bombshell. I remember the day clearly. I had just gotten home from work when I heard raised voices from the living room. "Pregnant?" Mom's voice was shrill. "Emma, how could you be so irresponsible?" I peeked around the corner to see Emma, looking defiant as ever, facing off against our shell-shocked parents. "It's not a big deal," Emma said, rolling her eyes. "Tyler's loaded. His family will take care of everything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emma had always been self-centered, but this was a new low. She was treating her pregnancy like a get-rich-quick scheme. Over the next few weeks, our house turned into a war zone. Mom and Dad were constantly on the phone, trying to reach Tyler's family. Emma lounged around, acting like a princess waiting for her prince to sweep her off her feet. And me? I was caught in the middle, trying to keep my head down and focus on my work. But of course, it couldn't last. One evening, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. "Naomi, sweetie," she began, her voice syrupy sweet. "We need your help. Could you watch Emma's baby sometimes after it's born? Just for a few hours here and there?" I nearly dropped the plate I was washing. "What? Mom, I work full-time. I can't be a babysitter." Her face fell. "But we're family. We need to support each other. Emma's going through a tough time." I couldn't hold back anymore. "And whose fault is that? Emma made her choices. Why should I have to sacrifice my life for her mistakes?" The argument that followed was explosive. Years of pent-up resentment came pouring out. I told them everything, how neglected I'd felt, how unfair their treatment had been, how tired I was of being the family afterthought. By the end, we were all in tears. Mom and Dad looked stunned, like they were seeing me for the first time. Emma, who had wandered in halfway through, just stood there with her mouth hanging open. "I'm moving out," I announced, my voice shaky but determined. "I can't do this anymore. I need to live my own life." Within a week, I had found a small apartment and moved out. For the next few months, I threw myself into my work. The advertising agency became my second home. I volunteered for every project, stayed late to learn new skills, and slowly but surely, started climbing the ladder. Emma had her baby, a boy. Tyler's family agreed to support the child financially, but Tyler himself wanted nothing to do with Emma or the baby. Last I heard, she was still living at home, letting our parents raise her son while she tried to figure out her life. Years flew by at the advertising agency. I'd worked my way up from coffee runner to junior copywriter, but I hit a ceiling. My boss, Sarah, called me into her office one day. "Naomi, you've got talent," she said, leaning back in her chair. "But without a degree, I can't promote you further. Company policy." That night, I crunched numbers. It would be tough, but I could do it. I'd been saving, living frugally in my tiny apartment. With some sacrifices, I could afford part-time classes at the local college. For grueling years later, I stood in my cap and gown, diploma in hand. I'd done it. Bachelor's degree in marketing and communications, with honors. Sarah was there, beaming like a proud mom. "I knew you had it in you, kid," she said, hugging me. "There's a senior copywriter position with your name on it." My career took off like a rocket after that. I moved up to senior copywriter, then account manager. I was handling major clients, pitching big ideas. It was at a client mixer that I met Jack. He was smart, funny, and didn't take himself too seriously. We bonded over our shared love of cheesy 80s movies and terrible puns. Before I knew it, we were dating. A year flew by, and Jack proposed. It wasn't some grand gesture, just a quiet moment in our favorite park. It felt right. As we planned the wedding, I knew I couldn't put it off any longer. It was time to face my family. We drove up to the house, and Mom answered the door, her eyes widening in shock. "Naomi? Is that really you?" Dad appeared behind her, looking older than I remembered. "Who's this?" he asked, eyeing Jack suspiciously. "This is Jack," I said, squeezing his hand. "My fiancé." You could have heard a pin drop in the silence that followed. Then, surprisingly, Mom burst into tears and hugged me. Dad shook Jack's hand, a bit too firmly. We settled in the living room, the air thick with unspoken words. Emma slouched in, a son on her hip. She looked tired, resentful. "So," Mom said, breaking the ice. "Tell us about yourself, Jack." As Jack chatted about his job in software development, I could see my parents' eyes light up. When I mentioned my degree and promotion, they practically glowed with pride. "2 college graduates in the family," Dad exclaimed. "Who would have thought?" Emma snorted from her corner. "Well, isn't this cozy?" The prodigal daughter returns, all successful and engaged. "So, what's the rush?" "Knocked up, are you?" The room went silent. Jack tensed beside me, but I put a hand on his arm. "I'd handle this." "Actually, Emma," I said, keeping my voice level, "Jack and I are getting married because we love each other and want to spend our lives together. We're planning for kids, sure, but only after we're financially stable and can provide them with a good life. You know, responsible family planning? You might want to look into it." Emma's face turned red. Mom gasped. Dad coughed awkwardly. "Well," Jack said, breaking the tension. "Who wants to see pictures of the venue?" The year leading up to the wedding was a whirlwind of planning, decisions, and, unfortunately, family drama. Jack and I had decided on a simple but elegant affair, nothing too extravagant. We wanted a day that reflected us, not some over-the-top production. My parents, however, had other ideas. "Naomi, dear," Mom said during one of our rare phone calls. "Don't you think we should be more involved in the planning? After all, it's not every day our daughter gets married." I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Mom, Jack and I have got this under control. We're adults, remember?" These conversations became a regular occurrence. Dad would call, complaining that they felt left out. Mom would text, asking why I didn't want their input. It was exhausting. Then came Emma's offer. She cornered me one day when I was at my parents' house, dropping off some wedding invitations. "Hey, sis," she said, sidling up to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I was thinking. I've got loads of free time. Why don't I help you with the wedding planning? Something in her expression made my skin crawl. It was the same look she used to get when we were kids, right before she'd do something to get me in trouble. Thanks, Emma, I said, carefully keeping my voice neutral. But Jack and I have got it covered. Her face fell, but I caught a flash of, was that malice? Oh come on, Naomi. Don't be like that. Can't you see I'm trying here? I stood firm. I appreciate the offer, but really, we're good. Of course, my parents got involved after that. The guilt trips started coming thick and fast. Naomi, your sister was only trying to help, Mom scolded over the phone. You could at least try to meet her halfway. Dad was more blunt. You're tearing this family apart with your stubbornness, he growled. Is that what you want? I wanted to scream. How was I the one tearing the family apart? Weren't they the ones who had played favorites all these years? Weren't they the ones who had pushed me away? But I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Look, I said, my voice calm but firm. This is my wedding, mine and Jack's. I love you guys, but I'm not going to let you or Emma hijack my wedding. It's not up for discussion. I threw myself into the wedding preparations with renewed vigor. Every decision, from the flower arrangements to the seating chart, was made with care and purpose. This wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was a statement. A declaration of independence. 2 weeks before the wedding, my world turned upside down. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when my phone rang. Aunt Sarah's name flashed on the screen. Naomi, honey, she said, her voice hesitant. There's something you need to know. My stomach dropped as she spoke. Emma, my dear sister, had decided to hold her engagement party on my wedding day. The very same day. I thanked her numbly and hung up. For a moment, I just sat there, stunned. Then, anger surged through me like wildfire. Before I knew it, I was in my car, speeding towards my parents' house. I burst through the front door without knocking. Emma, where is she? I demanded, my voice echoing through the house. Mom appeared from the kitchen, looking flustered. She's out. Naomi, what's going on? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. What's going on? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the fact that my dear sister is planning her engagement party on my wedding day. The color drained from my parents' faces. They exchanged a guilty look that told me everything I needed to know. You knew, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You knew and you didn't tell me. Now, Naomi, Dad began, his hands raised placatingly. It's not what you think. It just happened to fall on the same day. Pure coincidence. Coincidence? I spat the word out like it was poison. There are 365 days in a year, and she just happens to pick my wedding day? Mom stepped forward, her eyes pleading. Sweetie, we can make it work. We'll go to Emma's engagement in the morning, and then come to your wedding in the afternoon. It'll be a day of double celebration. I stared at them, incredulous. Years of pent-up resentment and hurt came bubbling to the surface. Do you hear yourselves? I asked, my voice shaking. After everything, all the years of favoritism, all the times you put Emma first, you're still doing it. On my wedding day. That's not fair, Naomi, Dad protested weakly. Not fair? I laughed again, tears pricking at my eyes. You want to talk about not fair? How about growing up feeling like I was invisible in my own home? How about watching you bend over backwards for Emma while I had to fend for myself? How about the fact that even now, when I'm finally happy, she has to try and ruin it? My parents stood there, shocked into silence. For the first time, I saw something like realization dawning in their eyes. I'm done, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I'm done competing for your attention. I'm done being the afterthought. You have a choice to make. You can come to my wedding, my whole wedding, not just part of it, or you can go to Emma's engagement. But you can't do both. With that, I turned and walked out, leaving them standing in stunned silence. I spent the evening drafting a polite but firm email to all our guests, explaining that due to unforeseen circumstances, I needed to confirm attendance. I didn't mention Emma or her engagement. I didn't need to air our family drama to everyone. Over the next few days, responses trickled in. To my relief and gratitude, most of our guests confirmed they would be at our wedding. But there was still a knot of anxiety in my stomach. My parents hadn't responded. The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear. As the time for the ceremony approached, I waited nervously in the bridal suite, expecting, hoping, to hear my parents' voices. But they didn't come. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They weren't going to be there to walk me down the aisle. Just as panic started to set in, there was a knock at the door. My best friend Lisa opened it to reveal my Uncle Robert, my dad's brother. "Naomi," he said, his eyes tearing up as he saw me. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." "Uncle Robert," I choked out, fighting back tears. "They're not coming, are they?" He shook his head sadly. "I'm so sorry, honey. But listen, if you'll have me, I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle." With Uncle Robert by my side, I made my way down the aisle. Jack's face when he saw me made all the stress and drama fade away. In that moment, it was just us. After the ceremony, as guests mingled during the cocktail hour, I pulled aside one of the venue's security guards. "If anyone tries to come in late," I said, my voice firm, "don't let them in. No exceptions." I rejoined the party, determined to enjoy every moment. And I did. Surrounded by friends and family who had chosen to be there for us, I felt loved and supported. But then, as I was chatting with some college friends, I saw a commotion near the entrance. My heart sank as I recognized the voices. "Let us in. Our daughter is getting married." My mother's shrill voice carried across the room. "We're the parents of the bride. We have every right to be here." My father's angry tones joined in. I excused myself and made my way closer, staying out of sight. Through the glass doors, I could see them, my parents, Emma, and a man I assumed was her fiancé. They were arguing with the security guard, gesticulating wildly. "This is our daughter's wedding," Dad yelled, his face red with anger. "We're practically the hosts here." The security guard, to his credit, stood firm. "I'm sorry, sir, but I have strict instructions not to allow any late guests." "No exceptions." Emma pushed forward, her face twisted in a sneer. "Oh, I bet this was Naomi's idea. Always so dramatic." I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned to see Jack. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, turning back to the scene. My parents were now threatening the guard, saying they'd call the police, that they'd sue the venue. It was embarrassing and heartbreaking all at once. Just then, my mother spotted me through the glass. Her eyes widened, and she started waving frantically, calling my name. My father and Emma joined in, all of them making a spectacle of themselves. I looked at them for a long moment, taking in the sight of my family, the people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally, making a scene at my wedding. Then, with a calm I didn't know I possessed, I turned my back on them and walked away. "Come on," I said to Jack, taking his hand. "Let's go cut the cake. We have a marriage to celebrate." As we walked back to our guests, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I had truly put myself first. It hurt, yes, but it also felt right. This was my day, my life, my choice. The days following the wedding were a blissful blur. It was a sunny Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "Hello?" "Naomi," Mom's voice came through, tight with barely contained anger. "We need to talk about what happened at your wedding. Your own parents. And Emma. We raised you better than this. We never expected such attitude and neglect from you. Are you quite finished?" I asked calmly when she paused for breath. "No, I am not," she snapped. We're waiting for an official apology from you. You need to recognize your mistake and make this right. This time, I couldn't hold back my laughter. It bubbled up from deep inside me, years of pent-up frustration finding release. Naomi, Mom gasped, sounding scandalized. This is no laughing matter. I took a deep breath, composing myself. You're right, Mom. It's not funny. It's sad. Sad that you still can't see how you've hurt me. Sad that you think I owe you an apology when you couldn't even be bothered to show up to my wedding. But Emma's engagement was on the same day by her choice, I cut in. And you chose her, again, like you always have. There was a long pause. When Mom spoke again, her voice was smaller, uncertain. Naomi, we're your parents. You can't just cut us out of your life. Watch me, I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice. I'm not going to apologize, Mom. And I'm not going to communicate with people who didn't even take the time to congratulate their daughter on her wedding day. I stood there for a moment, phone in hand, feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. Then I felt arms wrap around me from behind. You okay? Jack asked, resting his chin on my shoulder. I leaned back into him, smiling. Yeah, I think I am. Better than okay, actually. And I meant it. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. Free from the expectations, the comparisons, the constant feeling of not being enough. In the months that followed, life settled into a new, wonderful rhythm. Jack and I threw ourselves into our careers, saving up for our dream home. Our evenings were filled with house hunting, planning for the future, and simply enjoying each other's company. Work was going better than ever. Without the constant drain of family drama, I found myself more focused, more creative. I landed a big account that put me in line for a promotion. As for my family, I stayed true to my word. I didn't call, didn't write, didn't check in. It was hard at times, especially during holidays, but Jack's family welcomed me with open arms, showing me what unconditional love and support really looked like.